Welcome back to In Behalf of Animals. I'm Nicole Arcello. It's hard to keep going when it seems like the world is on fire. That steady stream of mostly bad news on TV and social media. Sometimes it's hard to find something good. The beginning of the year is sometimes a low point for me. When some people are recharged and refocused, it's a time for me to kind of keep to myself and reflect. I try to find some downtime when I can stay away from the news cycle and social media, and I withdraw a little. And I guess that's how I recharge myself after a long year and gear up for a new one. So it might surprise you to learn that I don't always run full speed into the new year. I mean, I'm in upstate New York with concrete skies and cold weather. January is the month where these short days seem to go on forever. It's in February when I typically get my energy back and want to conquer the world. Sometimes we just have to focus on ourselves and our efforts and take some time to figure out what to do next. Now, I still do my work. I'm still advocating for animals and the horses. And I'm here talking to you right now, right? It's January 16th, 2026, and a lot has happened. As this season unfolds, I'm astonished by the honesty from my guests, whether it comes through telling their vegan story or how they deal with the ups and downs of this work. It's so authentic, and I hope that comes through for you all as well. Look, we're all just real, regular people with one common goal: fighting for animal liberation. But it's hard when there are articles stating veganism is dead and a rollout of a new food pyramid guideline that's as nonsensical as it is corrupt. It's hard to keep going. But here we are, you and me, and so many more of us. This is why we need to lift each other up and keep going. We can't ever let anyone stop us. Our passion and compassion drive us, and that's so much more than most people have. We have to embrace it, no matter how much it hurts sometimes. It's because of all of this that the animals have hope. Today I'm talking to Matthew King from Christian Animal Rights Association, and you will hear that there are lots of things to celebrate when it comes to the fight for animals. Victories, and also just knowing your people are out there standing side by side with you in the fight. Hey, and by the way, of people and community, thank you for listening to me every other week. And I would love to hear from you too. Comment, write a review, send me a message on our website, inbehalfofanimals.org, or send us a note in our Substack chat. Community is important now more than ever. So thank you again for being here and giving the animals and me hope each day. Now let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Matthew King. Hi, Matthew. Welcome to In Behalf of Animals.
Hey, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to have you here. And there's so many great things that you're doing for animals. But I want to start with your vegan story, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And I've actually told this story many times too. So some of your viewers or some of your listeners might have heard this already, but
That's
it's kind of a
great.
unique one.
I haven't heard it, so I'm excited to hear it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So it all started actually in my wife and I are both nurses. We met in nursing school. We both started working at this like suburban hospital outside of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife one day, we were both like in our 20s, and she picked up a 16-hour shift, which she would like never do today. But
Wow.
yeah, exactly. That's a kind of like you only talk to like nurses and police officers that do shifts like that.
Right.
Oh yeah, and that's what led to this actually. She was this is just after, actually I'm sorry, it was 2013, but we had actually just gotten a Sheltie, a Shetland sheepdog. She brought this dog home because at the hospital they had these therapy dogs, and she fell in love with Shelties, and so we got the Sheltie, and he's still with us today, Ripley. He's about, let's see, he was born in 2013, so it was yeah, he just turned 12. But anyways, my wife had always loved animals growing up, and I loved animals, but I wasn't really allowed to have them like in the house or anything because my parents are Victorian furniture collectors, and so
Oh,
that was
okay.
always like a big no-no.
So right. That's funny.
So yeah, my wife was working this 16-hour shift at the hospital, and we had just gotten this dog, and she was driving home the one day after the 16-hour shift, and it was like nighttime. It was like 3 in the morning, and she was driving on this really busy road, and she kept feeling like she was gonna like fall asleep at the wheel, and so she was like slapping herself awake. and she saw this deer crossing sign, and then,
Mm.
she made it home okay and everything like that, but then she woke up the next morning. She got home at, like, 3 in the morning. She
Yeah.
woke up the next morning, and she was like, "I had this really awful dream where I hit a deer with my car because I was on this deer crossing road,
Ugh.
and the deer looked up at me after I tried to help him, and he said, 'If you're gonna eat me, you should eat your dog too.'" And
Oh,
so she had this,
wow.
like, yeah, like, this really vivid dream,
Wow, yeah.
and I thought she was, and we had just gotten married in 2012, so we were married for about a year, and I was just like, "What in the world is that? Like, what who
Yeah,
has a dream?" And then, like, so she decided to go vegan after that, or I'm sorry, vegetarian after that, actually, because she's
yeah.
like, "After I had this dream, I just could not eat meat ever again." And so I was like, "You're crazy. Like,
Oh.
what is this?"
Yeah. That's you told her vegan story too, so that's really
Right.
interesting too, wow.
Or vegan stories are interconnected too. It's one of those things that
Yeah.
can't escape it. And Nina, so she had this dream, and I thought she was, like, crazy for it. I'm like, "All right, whatever, be vegetarian, I don't care." And so then, after a couple months of having our dog, Ripley, the
Mm.
Sheltie, I started to learn more about dogs, and I never had dogs growing up, even though I liked them and stuff, and I started to notice things about animals that because in my mind, like, growing up, I always thought that animals were sort of like machines, like, I just thought of them as,
Yeah.
they eat, they poop, they play, or they eat and they poop, and then they sleep, and then that's it, and
Right.
they didn't have, like, unique personalities or anything like that. And
Yeah.
we we have, so I was watching Ripley the one day, and I had no idea what I was doing watching this dog. My wife was, working these 12, 16-hour shifts, and
Right.
working a lot, and then stuck me with his dog, and so then I'm learning about him. When I would pick up his food
Mm.
bowl, I would notice that there was, like, peas at the bottom of the bowl, and I was like, "That's really odd." And so then, I was watching him the one day, and he was actually spitting out the peas, and so
Yeah.
after that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, he actually has, like, preferences." It's like, I don't like
Yeah.
Brussels sprouts, he doesn't like
Wow.
peas. So then after that, I sort of learned that, like, animals really have personalities, and I started to understand, dogs more, and I started to look at animals differently after that. And then
Yeah.
I was watching this movie called Southern Comfort. I'm a big movie fan, you probably noticed from my Facebook, but I was watching this movie from the '80s called Southern Comfort, and, it's kind of like a knockoff of Deliverance, which is, you probably seen
Okay, yep,
Deliverance.
I know Deliverance.
Yeah, right, everybody everybody
Yep.
knows that movie, and, it was kind of a knockoff of that. It's about
Yeah.
the Marines that are down in New Orleans, and they're sorta, like, picking on these local, people that, like, live in the woods, and the
Oh,
locals get back at them, and they kidnap them and then bring them to their village. And there's this really graphic scene where these locals, they're about to, like, slaughter them, but they're slaughtering the pigs first. And I was watching this scene, and I thought maybe it was, like, fake or something because it was so graphic, but they actually slaughtered, like, actual pigs. And
god.
they were filming this movie, and the director was like, "Well, I mean, they're gonna do it anyway, so I might as well, like, capture it," because these were, like, real people, like, back in the woods. And
Yeah.
he caught the scene, and it was just really, really graphic, and I was like, "I can't eat meat again after that." And so then I didn't eat meat, for a good while after that. I did have one moment, though, where I went to a restaurant, and I started eating chicken wings, and, it was one of our favorite restaurants, and I remember holding the wing, and I was like, "This feels so much like my dog's bones." And
Mhm.
then after that, I never ate meat again after that.
Yeah.
So that
Wow.
started the vegetarian journey.
Yeah. Wow, everyone's stories are so different. I love that because, a lot of people will tell stories that they grew up with animals when they were young, and you didn't, so you had a different perspective, on animals, and then a lot of people, they don't change as an adult, right?
Right.
But so many of us that are vegan do, because we do open our eyes to animals. So, is there more to that story?
A little more, yeah, well,
Yeah, go
there's
ahead.
so it's, of course, it's the vegetarian journey, so we did
Yeah,
that
we
for.
did vegetarian, right?
Right, that
So
that
that's
shouldn't
right.
always be like, I'm always impressed when I meet people and they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I've been vegan," I went, like, meat eater vegan. I'm like, "How did you do
I
that?"
know, once in a while we have somebody like that, and it's, like, overnight, and it's like, "Wow," you know?
It's like people that say that, like, they, drank alcohol once and then they stopped forever, and I'm just like, "You didn't have any
Right.
hiccups along the way or anything like that?"
Right.
Exactly, right. And so the vegan journey started too because my wife and I, were vegetarian for, like, 2014 to, like, 2013 to 2016, somewhere in there. And then around 2016, she watched this documentary called Earthlings, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with.
And if they haven't, they need to.
Right, right. Well,
Right?
actually, it's funny you mentioned that too, 'cause, my wife watched it and she was like, "Yeah, I watched this movie about," is Joaquin Phoenix narrated, and it's about, like, animal abuse within the milk and dairy, or the dairy and the egg industries as well as the meat industries,
Mhm.
and I think I need to be vegan." And I was like, "Oh my god, like, this is
Like
nuts, like, you're
right.
vegetarian already, like, we've done
Mhm.
enough, vegans are crazy, like, what are you talking about?" I was sort of giving her the ninth degree about it, and
Yeah.
and then she was like, she posed a question to me, and I'll always remember this, and she goes, "Well, how about this? Like, will you watch the movie?" And I was like, "No, I don't need to watch it. Like, that's a bunch of vegan propaganda, blah, blah, blah." She's like, "If you won't listen to me, will you at least watch the movie?" And I was
Right.
like, "I don't need to listen to your propaganda, whatever." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not watching the movie." And I stormed off into my office here, and I sat here for like 20 minutes, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, if I watch that movie, I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna go
Mhm.
vegan. And so
Then I'm gonna be a crazy vegan, right?
yeah, right, right.
Right.
I'm just gonna absorb it. And so I was like, I'm just gonna skip the movie and I'll just do, and then she started making all these really delicious meals. Like she like went and got like all these recipe books from like Colleen Patrick Goodrow and
Mm.
really like
Yeah,
studied
good
up on
ones.
like vegan
Yeah.
cooking and stuff. And
Yeah.
she started making all these awesome meals, and I was just like, well, this is pretty easy actually. So I transitioned pretty easily from vegetarian to vegan.
I'm really astonished by the guests on this podcast, how everyone is really honest about their vegan stories and what they thought. And because I always think we need to go back as activists to remember where we were at before we were vegan. Most of us weren't born vegan, and I think it's so important to be honest with ourselves and with telling those stories, because it's hard.
Yep.
It was hard for us. We're not, especially we have people on the podcast that are doing big things for animals, and they're making big changes, and they're heads of groups or whatever, and they're out there doing things. And I want people who listen to really, we all came from the same start, right? We had the same start, and we're all just regular people. We're not like superheroes or whatever. I'm probably really repetitive on my podcast, but you know what? That's okay. Because if someone's listening today for the first time. So how did you go from vegetarian to vegan to Christian Animal Rights Association?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of a fun one too. Well, I
Mm.
shouldn't say fun. That one actually was a little bit more dramatic, but as if it hadn't already been dramatic, right? So
Yeah.
in 2016, it was around actually like 2015. I started to look more into, like, I grew up Catholic and Lutheran, and my parents were never like serious about religion. Like they did the like, hey, let's go to church on Christmas and Easter, and then I got like
Right.
baptized and I got communion and all the whole thing, but it was never like a serious thing. But
Yeah.
my wife's dad is a pastor, and so marrying into the family, I kind of knew that that was going to be something. But I was like sort of like agnostic atheist through college, and
Mhm.
then I started to look at faith a little bit differently, like in like 2015 ish, and
Yeah.
I started to like, for me at least, my faith and my veganism have always been sort of intertwined because I started to become serious about investigating Christianity like around 2015. And I read a lot of books.
Mm.
I'd always been fascinated by like a lot of like Christian history and things like that.
Mhm.
And so I started to look into it more in depth. And then that also sort of coincided with my vegetarian and vegan journey. And then I started to look at like around 2015, 2016, I started to look at like, well, what is the Bible? I started reading the Bible actually in 2015, and I was like, I'm going to read it from cover to cover. And
Yeah.
it took me from 2015 to 2018. So basically like 3, 4 years, um, to read it from like sort of cover to cover. And I was looking for like, what does the Bible say about animal rights? What does it say about veganism?
Right.
And along that journey, I sort of realized that like the Bible does have a very strong animal rights and vegan message. And so then after we became vegan in 2016, we started to get involved with the Christian Vegetarian Association,
Mhm.
CVA. They're run by Steve Kaufman, who's great. He's actually on our
Yes.
board of directors. You might know of him.
I've heard of it. Yes. Mhm.
Awesome guy. And we started learning more about that, and we started like tabling with their events. We started doing like veg fests and stuff like that. And um, along the way, we sort of realized like there was definitely a vegan message within the Christian community that
Yeah.
was not being acknowledged and things like
Right.
that. And then along the way, what got us really serious, like we were thinking along the way, like as we were doing these CVA events, we were like, there's not really like a group that's doing anything like legislatively or like politically or like working with corporations to try to advance animal rights, like, changing what companies do or changing what um, laws for animals and things like that from a Christian perspective. And so that was sort of brewing in our minds along the way. Like if we ever
Yeah.
wanted to create our own organization, we do have allcreatures.org, who they do mostly like education as well, along with CVA. But anyways,
Yeah.
we thought about making our own group for a long time. We thought about, oh, maybe we should do like a dog rescue or something like that, but it never really came to fruition. And then what happened was, late like 2017, I got a really bad Crohn's flare because I got diagnosed with Crohn's
Mm.
in 2012. My uncle has it as well, so it was sort of like um, it was it was surprising at first, but then I learned that there's sort of a
It's
family
kinda
history,
like,
and that was actually backing up to that was sort of another reason why vegetarian and vegan was sort of good for me too. Because my doctor, the first thing he told me in 2012 was like, "Yeah, stop eating red meat and stop eating dairy, or like don't drink like whole milk." And so I started drinking like almond milk back in 2012. So that
yeah.
was sort of an early moment for me as well, where it's like it's also connected to your health as well.
Mhm.
And he even said too, he's like, "Yeah, people that don't eat red meat do much better." But anyways, I got diagnosed in 2012, started on medication, and it was quiet for 5 or 6 years. And then
Mm.
2017, 2018, I had a really bad flare actually that almost killed me.
Oh,
Yeah, it was, I lost 65 pounds. And so like, I'm usually like 185, 190. I dropped down to like 120, 125 pounds. And
oh,
I look at pictures from back then and I'm like, oh my God, like
yeah.
even when I see the year 2018, I'm like, oh God, that
Yeah,
whole,
right? It's like
that year was
bad
horrible.
memories, yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And so then after that, I ended up surviving obviously, and I got, a bowel resection, so I got like 5 feet of intestines taken out,
Oh my.
but I did much better after that, and, my doctor actually said too, he was like, "Yeah, definitely stick with the plant-based diet, definitely stick with the vegan diet, like, patients do better on that." So
Yeah.
it's also the health aspect as well that's been really good, and he switched
Yeah.
around some of my medications, and he said that if you he said 90% of patients, they have one flare that requires a resection, and then they never have a problem again. And so I'm hoping that I'm in that
Oh,
90%.
fing
And so, after that, after I survived that, I had this whole entire, like, year and a half where I, like, didn't eat properly, and, I had, basically starved for until I got the bowel resection, and then I started to have this, like, moment where I was like, "Man, I really wanna do something, like, amazing," after I got through that, and
yeah.
Nina and I were sort of thinking, and we were like, "Yeah, we should make like an association that or an organization that works with companies and does like legislative work and also education." And so we formed the Christian Animal Rights Association, and
Yeah.
it was sort of a living embodiment of our faith, as well as basically, trying to show Christians that God cares about animals and that animals deserve rights, and God wants a paradise where humans no longer harm animals.
Yeah.
And-
Wow, like, there's a whole discussion in this because there's so many times people use the Bible against us vegans, don't they?
Oh yeah.
So I see you have the book Dominion behind you
Oh
on your
yes.
bookshelf. And it's exactly what I was thinking when you're talking is a lot of people say that's the argument is, God gave us dominion over animals, and sometimes it's a hard thing to, counter. I think maybe all activists, like a lot of vegans are, what do we say to that? Do you have something,
Actually,
you
yeah, that's
know?
probably my the most common question we get is like, "Oh, well, we have
Yeah.
dominion over animals, right?" That's
Something quick you could like, or not even quick. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's actually that one's actually pretty quick. Uh,
Yeah.
but so God gives humans dominion over animals in Genesis 1:26 to 28. There's that
Yeah.
section. And then what people always forget though, because 'cause they're like, "Oh, well, that means I can eat meat." It's like, no, actually, dominion in Genesis 1:26 to 28, the very next verse, Genesis 1:29, it says that humans, are to only eat plants, and as well as the animals are only to eat plants in Genesis 1:30. And
Right.
so what dominion means is obviously this non-violence, and so it means not actually using them for food. That's what dominion means in the context.
Right.
Um, and then if anytime I've studied Hebrew quite a bit, and one thing I've learned about it is, like, words will be reused, and then you always have to look at how that word is used in a different context to really get an understanding of what that means. And
Right.
dominion, the reason that's sort of been understood as difficult to navigate, especially from the vegan argument, is because in other places dominion is used sort of like violently, but it
Right.
doesn't mean that. You have to look at the context of the word. Like there's, half the times that the Bible mentions dominion is violent, and then the other half it mentions it's peaceful. And so you really have to look at the context of what that means. But in obviously in Genesis 1, it means this non-violent dominion. And then in Psalm 72, dominion is actually discussed, and it talks about a righteous king. And so this righteous king will look after those who are under him. He will protect them from oppression. He will deliver them from justice. And it has this big long psalm about what the righteousness of a dominion looks like. And so
Mhm.
that's really what that means over animals. And then just to finally sort of like seal the argument, I always talk about
Yeah.
how it was in Eden is how it will be at the end of time. Like it's called the new earth. And that's how Jesus will come back and restore the world to what it was in Genesis 1 and 2, where humans and animals were vegan and there was no violence whatsoever. That's restored at the end of time. And it's talked about in Isaiah 11:6 through 9. And it says, the most famous, everybody knows this, the wolf will lay with the lamb, the lion will lay the lion will graze like the cow. And then
Right.
what it says about humans, it says a little child will take care of them. And so how that was at the end is how the beginning was. And so Genesis 1, when it talks about dominion, that's really what that means is caretaking.
Right.
And so that's really what the responsibility of humans are is caretaking over the animals. And there's a theologian named Andrew Lindsay, that you might have heard of him. He's pretty well known in the Christian circles, but
Yeah.
he calls humans the servant species. And I think that's a really great way to put it is that like
Yeah.
one of my favorite things that Christians will say is, "Oh, well, God put animals here for us." And I said, "No, you actually have that completely backwards. Humans were
Yes, people say that all the time.
right."
Right.
And it's like, that's not the God of the Bible.
Yeah.
That's the narcissistic God that you follow of your belly. And
Yeah.
it's this idea that humans were created for the animals. We're supposed to be the caretakers, and that's really what the
Right.
vision God has for all of us.
Right. Yeah, like, we need that on a leaflet that we can carry with us. So,
Right.
I think that if you countered somebody who throws that out there as their only thing they've got, they wouldn't know what to do with that information, right? Because 'Cause you're proving them wrong. They're just taking out, and I find these are people who will try to quote the Bible, but they're not involved in any other way, shape, or form when they're trying to fight vegans with that,
Right.
the Dominion argument. But
Yeah.
that's a great amount of information on that. I love that. What is your group doing right now? I know you have a lot going on. I want to talk about the bans on rodeos because I know you're involved in that. Go ahead.
Well, since our inception too, we always sort of like I had sort of the vision for the group as like, like PETA talks about focusing on animals harmed for food, experimentation, fashion, and entertainment. And when we first jumped into the organization, we really wanted to focus on food because it's like, that's by far the most animals that are harmed.
Yeah.
And I think I talked about with you and Patrick about how we started out as sort of like, how can we gain leverage over the meat industry? And
Yeah.
in the years that we've been doing this since 2019, we've noticed that things aren't really moving real well with the food part. Unfortunately, like
Mm.
we've had a couple of wins. Like we partnered with an organization, Humane Action Pittsburgh, now Humane Action Pennsylvania, and we got a ban on foie gras in Pittsburgh. Um,
Yeah, that's awesome.
oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was our first big win.
Yeah.
That was in 2022, and Pete actually did an interview with my wife and I about it, which was really cool.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, thank you, and that was cool, and then we also worked on, the foie gras ban in Brookline, Massachusetts this year, so that was really good. But, one thing that came to our attention and we had been working on, like, fashion, experimentation, and entertainment throughout that, but it wasn't really our focus,
Yeah.
and throughout the years, we've noticed that we're not really making a dent in the food industry, unfortunately, and so we've sort of shifted on that.
Yeah.
Not that we're not, of course, doing things, but, it's
Yeah.
kind of like speaking of broken record, it's just like, you're saying the same things over and over again, and you're not seeing
Right.
move and we have some strategies upcoming for that. I'll talk about that later, but
Yeah, yeah. Good.
the, one thing we've shifted from was back in July of 2024, what really that whole summer, like, changed my life actually, because I heard this, really great speech from Bruce Friedrich about the future of food, and he
Mm.
talked about how, sort of like lab-grown meat is the future, and I said to Nina, I was like, "I think that's something we need to start pursuing," but anyways, more on that later, but
Yep.
what I wanted to talk about was in 2024, so growing up in Pittsburgh, there had never been a rodeo anywhere near Pittsburgh just because, back in 1990, there was a rodeo event down at the old Civic Arena, which is where the Penguins play,
Mhm.
and this animal, they had I'm not sure exactly what event it was, but it was a rodeo. It was like a full rodeo, like calf roping the whole bit, and this bull actually broke his leg and
Mhm.
had to be euthanized, like, right in the arena, and so
Yeah.
Pittsburghers were just outraged about it because, there was, like, kids there, and they're watching this bull suffer while he has to get
Awful.
euthanized, and it was just absolutely horrible, and so it
Yeah.
created this outrage in Pittsburgh after that, and
Yeah.
our mayor at the time was, Sophie Masloff. She was, I think she was the first female mayor of Pittsburgh, actually, and Pittsburgh's a really progressive town, which I later found out, but
Yeah.
anyways, we were the first city in the country to ban rodeo, and that was back in 1992, and they created an ordinance, and basically, it didn't ban rodeos, it banned the tools of torment, which was it bans flank straps, electric prods, wire tie downs, and spurs. And so you could go to a rodeo in Pittsburgh, but you can't have those 4 items. And what that really showed was that these animals are tormented by those instruments because if you take away those instruments, you can't have a rodeo.
Right.
And so that really proved that. And Pittsburgh, so as long as I've been in Pittsburgh, there's never been a rodeo anywhere near here. Now, there was a circus growing up. Like I used to see ads for the circus and stuff, and
Oh,
then
there you
that
go.
got shut down later as well.
Mm.
Humane Action Pennsylvania got that banned in 2017, but
Oh, it's good.
um, yeah, it was really good, and
Yeah.
2024, what happened was totally in the dark, no one knew about it in Pittsburgh, but what happened was professional bull riders, they tried to actually I think what happened was because of Los Angeles has been trying to ban rodeo since 2020, and the industry has been fighting it, like, pretty tooth and nail because they know the circus ban started in LA,
Mhm.
and then they spread like wildfire after that, and
Yeah.
LA banned it in, like, 2014, I think, and then now, 10 years later, the circus basically no longer exists except for in some rural areas,
Right.
um, and so the rodeo industry is worried about that, and so they've been fighting the Los Angeles ban, and so they saw where Los Angeles got their language from, and it was from Pittsburgh, and so then the rodeo industry came into Pittsburgh and then tried to talk to the city council to try to remove the law, actually.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and so
We
it's
can
pretty
never
intense.
rest after we get after we get a ban on something. I always say that we celebrate, we go on to the next one, but we have to be aware that they could try to come back in,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And try to overturn it. You have a new set of council members. You never know what's going to happen. So you always have to be aware of what's going on in the area you live in, but probably more on that later. Go ahead.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, stay vigilant. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's what happened is, they tried to come into the city and try to get the law removed, and of course and actually, this is, sort of rumors, but I heard the mayor actually was almost willing to do it,
Oh,
and the city council, like, balked out it. They were like, "No, we haven't heard anything from constituents saying that they want this law removed," and yada, yada, so it was shelved. I didn't even hear
okay.
about this actually, which goes to show
Yeah.
you that. So then they went to the state, and they paid this lobbyist, $40,000 to try to get that law removed, and this is based on what I've heard. They
Yeah.
couldn't get the law removed, and so they were allowed to come into Pittsburgh with this $40,000 lobbyist, and they went to a senator, uh, to try to let them do this, and they slipped that into the state budget. And so it slipped into the state budget, and then now they're allowed to come into Pittsburgh despite there being a ban. And and it's one thing, if it was one thing like where they said, "Hey, what do Pittsburghers think of this?" And then,
Mhm.
60% of Pittsburghers said, "Okay, yeah, sure, let them in." It would be like, "Okay, that sucks, but we can deal with that." But the fact that it was done in the dark, there was no memo
Yeah.
whatsoever, no one knew about it. It was all just done completely in the dark and under the table. That's what really, and my wife knows, I mean, I couldn't sleep about it for like 2 weeks. I was just like, "I
Mhm.
cannot believe that that happened," and
Yeah.
so we've been dealing with that. We've been trying to get the rodeo out of Pittsburgh, and one of the strategies that I've been really dealing with is because I didn't know that rodeo was so popular living here for so long,
Mm.
and so I started to look at like, okay, professional bull riders came into Pittsburgh, but where else do they go? And,
Right.
I found out how popular they were actually, which I had never knew, and then I started looking and they went to New York City, they went to Chicago, they've been in LA, they've been in all these different cities, and so what I started doing was
They're here in Albany. We're recording this in December. They're here in Albany tonight and tomorrow night. We'll be protesting tomorrow night and a little bit more about that later as well. Go ahead.
excellent.
Sorry.
Excellent. No, no, it's good. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, that's right. Albany is a big city that they're in, and
Yeah.
so I started contacting, I basically went on the warpath, and I started
Mhm.
contacting, like, every vegan group in every major city that they were at, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
does anybody know a city council member? Does anybody wanna see this banned?" And so,
Right.
in the last year and a half, I've been able to, leverage a lot of different, constituents to try to get bans in cities, and so right now,
Yeah.
our ministry is working heavily in Los Angeles, because that's sorta like the battleground area.
Yeah.
They've shifted that ordinance many times, and we'll talk about that later, but,
Yeah.
since then, I've partnered with, the members of Shark, and we've managed to get a ordinance going in Chicago to ban rodeos as well as, New York City. That one, we're adjusting the language a little bit, but we ended up getting 37, council members to sign onto it out of 51, so we had a super majority,
Oh, wow. In New York City.
in New York
That's
City. Yep.
great. Yeah.
Yep, there's been a lot of support for it. It's a ban on the tools of torment, and so right now, the way it's written, it goes after calf roping, flank straps, and electric prods, but, in the future, I think we're gonna modify it and just make it some of the more tools instead of the calf roping part,
Mhm.
and then we've also managed to get one very far in Worcester, Massachusetts. That's been
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
That's moving along really well.
yes, yeah, they're
Yeah.
they're currently in the stages of writing it, and, that one's actually kinda funny because we expected the rodeo industry to fight it, and
Mm.
um, we brought it to Counselor King's attention, who's been really great about supporting it, and he's been all about the tools of torture ban. And, we got it, and they needed to have a hearing in order to, get an ordinance written. That's how Worcester works.
Okay.
And then it passed unanimously, actually, and the rodeo industry was there, actually, but it was only a half hour to talk about it, and they ended up not being in it, but they had a post the next morning on Facebook that said, "We
Oh,
weren't allowed to speak at this meeting, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "It wasn't just you, it was the people
right.
that everybody."
Yeah, because they ran out of time, right?
Right, but
Right.
they posed it as if they're being, suppressed by their free speech or something ridiculous
Of
like that.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna cry about it, right?
Right, and, so yeah, that's the main cities, and then we're also working on I sort of the plan right now, and, my good friend Steve, he might be listening, but, eventually, but he
Mhm.
put it well. He was like, "Yeah, what you're doing is sort of creating many fires," and I was like, "Yeah, that's a really
Mhm.
good way to put it, is sort of like."
Yeah.
That's really what I wanna do, is I just wanna make it so many cities that they have to deal with or contend with that they can't possibly fight all of them, and they're very busy in Los Angeles right now, and I think the
Yeah.
rodeo industry, they expected that, "Oh, well, like, we're gonna fight Los Angeles, and then that'll dampen down and everybody else won't wanna fight it," and I wanna show them that it's like, Los Angeles, even though they lead the way, they don't
Yeah.
have to. Look, we can do things
Right.
even if LA doesn't do it.
Yeah. And that's really important to know that anybody can do this wherever they live,
That's
right?
right.
So whatever city or town you live in, and we'll walk people through that in a little bit. Did you want to talk a little bit more about LA?
Oh, certainly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and also too, what I wanted to touch on too was our ministry. after what happened in Pittsburgh, we decided to focus on rodeos because
Yeah.
being sunk into rodeo culture, like for like the last year, I mean, I could write a book on it on how much I know
Right.
about.
Like us with horse racing, right?
That's right.
We know we know every little detail about every little person almost in in racing, you
Right.
know? It's kind
Well,
of
you're the
you didn't
expert in
expect
that.
your life to go in that direction, right?
That's
Right.
exactly right. I, I talk about that all the time with like I was telling her the one night I was like, when I was in high school, I never imagined that I would be like the forefront of banning rodeos. Like if you told me like,
Right.
yeah, be an anti-rodeo activist, I'd been like, what the hell are you talking
What
about?
are you talking about? What's a rodeo? You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we haven't had that here since 1990s.
Right.
It's
That's
so
funny.
true. Unexpected directions. Yeah, and so what we realized too is as we were fighting the rodeo in Pittsburgh, we realized that a lot of the rodeo culture is surrounded by Christianity, which is really odd because, like they start every rodeo starts with a prayer, and it's like this
Oh,
cowboy's prayer and all this nonsense. And then I was thinking about
yeah.
it. It was like I already knew this already, but it's like, what does the Bible have to say about hurting animals for entertainment? And there's a very actually strict, it's a harder claim to, as you know, to make a claim that the Bible says you have to be vegan. It doesn't say that, but it's very much
Right.
encouraged, is what we'll say.
Yeah.
But there's no tolerance whatsoever for hurting animals for entertainment. Like Genesis 49:6, it
Yeah.
says, "May I never join in their meetings, may I never join in their councils, for they murdered men and they crippled oxen just for sport." And
Mhm.
so it's this idea that like, it's God very much condemns the idea of hurting animals just for the sake of entertainment.
Right.
Um, so that's sort of something that we realized too, is that our ministry is
Yeah.
in a unique place to sort of advocate against rodeos because
Yeah.
they have a lot of that Christian culture surrounding it.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I know having Jody and, Steve Hindy from, Jody Whittaker's team Hindy from Shark on the podcast, that they were talking about, a lot of the pushback they're getting in Illinois is like, ethnic groups that are but I didn't realize there was, like, prayers being in the beginning of rodeos, like, I didn't is that part of, like, ethnic thing, or is it like a because it's born out of the South, maybe, for the professional bull riding?
I have a
Um,
theory. I think it's mostly, like, and you see this a lot actually with Christianity, and as you know, with the dominion argument. I think when people
yeah.
know that they're doing something wrong, they have to justify it somehow, and
Yeah.
the Bible becomes sort of an easy thing to justify it with. And then I
Mm.
think it's also this is not. I don't mean to get political, of course. I'm just to put it out there. I'm like sort of a political moderate. I could, I
No,
could
go
see that
ahead. You could
points.
say whatever you want.
Right, yeah, but I
You could say
but I think a lot of rodeo culture is sort of steeped in that conservatism, and
Oh, yeah,
with that
definitely.
conservatism is that, like, I respect authority, and so
Yeah.
what is more authoritative than, "Hey, God in the sky is telling me that this is okay,"
Yeah.
and there's that idea because a lot of them also begin with, like,
Yeah.
patriotic, like, "Oh, hey, here's the flag, and, America
Yeah.
first," all this other stuff, and then
Do they sing the national anthem before,
yeah, and
rodeo events too?
oh, yeah, and then they make,
Like
like,
for
a big
sporting
flag
events?
spectacle and stuff like this. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty common. It's that sort of like I think it appeals to that sort of nationalism, that, like, conservative nationalism, because that's really
Right.
what it is too. A lot of the people that go to that have this, like, like, when we're outside of a lot of the rodeo protests, it's like, you'll see a lot of conservative signs and
Oh,
things like
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
You see a lot of that. Like, that's not it's different it's more they see it as a sport, I would say, kind of like horse racing is a sport in a different way. They see it they call it that. But the circus wasn't a sport. They weren't doing a prayer before the circus. They weren't doing the national anthem before the circus. It was a show. So it is a little different when you frame it in that way.
Yeah, and we actually had a sign. It was funny because we collaborated with, Humane Action Pennsylvania on
Mm.
a billboard outside of the arena, and I was like, "Yeah, I think we should have, like, like, a Christian message, like, we should say something like Proverbs 12:10,
Yeah.
the wicked are cruel to animals," and, like, have that, and then they sort of, like, were like, "I don't know if we wanna do that," and then I was like, "Most of that rodeo stuff is steeped in Christian culture," and then they were like, "That's"
Yeah. Yeah, you're in a unique position, as your organization to, match them on that level. But go ahead.
No, it's good, yeah, yeah, thank you, and yeah, and then the biblical aspect too, it was actually funny
Yeah.
because we did that protest outside of Pittsburgh, the stadium, and, we had these signs and it said, like, Genesis 49:6, God hates bull riding, and then we had another one that says, Proverbs 12:10, like, God hates animal cruelty, and we were shouting that stuff, and it was
Yeah.
really funny because we got actually a lot of good responses, like, a lot of people came up to us and they were like, "Wait, like, God doesn't like bull riding?" And like, "Oh, well, like, God thinks that this is animal cruelty," and so we got a lot of really good response out of that, and then
Wow.
we had
'Cause
this,
it's a tough crowd, the people going into these rodeos, like, we've done protests over the years at rodeos, bull riding, and it is a tough crowd going in. They do not want to see protesters. It's a tough crowd. Let me say it. Let me put it that way. So you had people going in, coming and interacting with the things you were saying?
Yeah, actually, we had one, it was actually
Interesting.
really interesting. We had a couple, they were Catholic, and then they were like, "Yeah, we're Catholic, and, like, we saw your signs, and we didn't realize that, like, bull riding was animal cruelty," and so we got it sort of, like, got a foot in the door with them, which was really
Yeah. Yeah, because 'cause you're kinda meeting them where they're at in that way,
right,
you know, in a religious type of way, which doesn't happen in,
right.
um, in activism typically. That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's sort of like and if you guys, go into the protest tonight too, I can supply you with some counterpoints as well too, or, things that you could say.
Definitely.
'Cause I think what happens too a lot with those conservative crowds
Yeah.
is that they hear like, "Oh, this is animal cruelty." They don't care. They're just like, "That's
Yeah.
not really a value of mine." But if you
Yeah.
tell them that God is telling them it's animal cruelty, they're like, "Wait a minute."
Wait a minute, right? Because that's their argument. And then, also, I'd like to point out too, because, when you I always like to point out when you're protesting, it's not always the people going in. We're not always going to reach them. So maybe but it is the people driving by. So
Sure.
that's important too, because we want to those are the constituents, right? So when we're doing these fights, we want to educate them, let them know something wrong is going on here, because they would be driving by these arenas, right? They're driving by these arenas, they're going out to dinner, it's December, they're having a Christmas party or whatever. They have no idea what's going on in there, but if protesters are there, then they're like, "Oh, something's wrong here." And then it at least brings up their interest. So if they happen to be, and I saw this when I was watching the, it was at the city meeting in Worcester.
Oh, yeah.
So a man got up at the podium and I don't think he was with you guys. He was talking about the drones and taxes.
Yeah.
And then he said the woman before him spoke, and I could be wrong here, but I hope I'm not. But the woman before him spoke about the bull riding ban or the tools. And so this man got up and spoke about, and then he said, and I agree with the woman before me, that we should not have, this kind of animal cruelty in our city. And I said, I was hoping, I'm like, that he wasn't with us.
Well,
And that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that because,
mhm.
I know I just bring this on you here, but,
I
but
think that's okay.
I was like, wow, that's so great. And Patrick and I were watching and I said, that is so awesome. Like that guy, I don't think he was with us. And it's so nice that we educated that one person. So you're always educating no matter what you're doing in the process. And I think
Sure.
we get so bogged down as activists, in what we're doing and who we're trying to reach. And we have to remember we're always reaching everybody all the time. We have the potential. So I just wanted to talk about that because that was really, really amazing. And he probably didn't even know about that until he was listening to other people speak. So, and he
Right.
jumped in on it, and that was really great. And I hope everyone really took a lot of pleasure in seeing that are in this fight in Worcester.
And the funny thing about that too is, which, it was awesome to hear that, but it was also even funnier
Yeah.
because the woman that first came out actually wasn't even with us either. And
Really?
yeah, we didn't even know who she was because there was a couple, like, now, not to say that what she said was bad because it was very, like, emotionally provocative, but there was a couple errors in there because I
Yeah.
was sort of sweating because I was like, "Oh god, please don't say anything stupid," like,
Yeah,
especially
I know.
because it's like, that's the first thing that the rodeo industry does is they're like, "Oh, these people don't know what they're talking
Yeah.
about." Yeah, and, you
Mhm.
really have to make sure that, like, what you're saying, because like, she talked about, like, how, um, like, they electric prod their testicles and all this other stuff, and I was like, "No, not
Yeah,
that."
I did we
Right,
caught that when we were like, "I don't think that happens," but
right.
yeah, yeah,
And you always wanna be
um,
accurate with the things you say, and, like, some of that emotional,
right,
provocative stuff, that's the first thing that now, not that it's probably totally untrue, there probably is some sort of basis in it, but that's not, like, a standard practice.
right,
Yeah,
yeah. It's really important to stick to the script and, the whoever's involved in, leading the charge on these, when you're a person joining, stick to the script and trust in the people that are at the top of this because they are the ones, that are working really, really hard. Like we've worked on different new horse racing proposals in Massachusetts. And it's like, stick to those talking points and don't veer off because that's when the industry is going to try to get you. And if you have a problem with the people at the top, go talk to them because we're all human. Just
that's
throw
right.
that out there too while I'm saying it.
I'm
But
so glad you said that too, because that's, like, that was something I got really frustrated with, and Karen, Bacon from PCA knows, like, me and her have done,
yeah.
we've like really made sure to get all of our talking points on the same page. And there was this
Yeah.
one woman, I really appreciate her speaking out, but she had like a comment not to throw her under the bus because this could happen sort of to anybody, but I think she
Yeah.
sort of get the talking points because she was like, oh, well, if you ban the tools, they're just going to come up with another tool. And I was like,
Oh, yeah,
no,
I heard that one too.
it's like,
Yeah, I know.
oh, you're killing me.
I
It's
think
like,
sometimes people think you have to, like, say, was she trying to say, like, if I don't know.
I think she
I
was
w
saying that like, oh, well, if you ban the electric prod, they'll just use like a baseball bat. It's like, well, no, the way
Right,
the ordinance are usually written is like you can't use an electric prod, a flank trap, or any other similar device that could cause, it's sort of an extension. And
right,
but when
right,
she said that, it made us look like idiots because then it's like, oh, well, like, they're just going to use a baseball bat. Like we didn't think of that.
right, or, like, why bother? Like, what are
Right.
you know? And I think a lot of people do feel like that, like, oh, a lot of us. And I think that's another reason why I do this podcast to try to get everybody on the positive end of things and not always be dragged down in the negative. Because I think, like we were saying earlier, that Pittsburgh had a ban and then something slipped through on the state level, but it doesn't mean you give up. And look what it did to you. You decided, I'm taking this on across the country now because, I'm gonna help everybody do this. And so, you took it as an opportunity instead of saying, "Oh, this sucks." And we're always telling people, I really believe in the power of the people and constituents really making change, and I really do believe it. I love going to the Capitol here in New York. I love it, love it, love it. And even if we lose, I'm still so glad I was there because somebody was there speaking for the animals. Because if nobody's there speaking for the animals if we're not doing it. So it's so important. So anyway,
Absolutely.
so yes, sticking to scripts, not being negative, it's really, really hard to stay positive. But that's why, you have those supports around you,
Right. Right.
you
And
know.
and I think also and what you said was perfect too. It's like, power of the people. And then also I think another thing that I think vegans they tend to do this thing where they're like, you know what, I'm gonna try to reach people through what I do. But there's studies that have been done that shows that as legislation moves, opinions start to change. And
Right.
so I think a lot of times we put that sort of, for lack of a better term, cart before the horse. And we think like, oh, well, we'll educate people and then the laws will change. But it's kind of a feedback where it's like you need to change the laws and that's what changes people's minds. And it's
Right.
like I'm not one, and I think this might be because of the Bible. I'm not one to be very positive about human nature. It's like I think that
I think it's a lot of animal activists are not
exactly,
positive
exactly.
about right.
My wife and I always say it's like we're nurses, we're animal activists, and we're Christians. It's like you're bound to be negative about human nature. There's just
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
and some education on that actually. The Bible says in Genesis 8:20, it says the heart of man is evil from his youth,
Mm.
and right after that actually is when God first allows meat consumption. And so that's
Uh,
a fun little fact is that it's meat eating is associated with the heart of man's evil. And
yeah.
when I think about that too, it's like, an example I always think of is would people like even though there was abolitionists throughout the centuries that were like, hey, stop enslaving people, do you think anybody would have listened if there wasn't a law against it? Or if they had some sort of fear of going to jail for it? There's still slave
Right.
owners, even though it's illegal. I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah, you can't say, like, "Just stop that, it's bad." Like, that's what we do as vegans, right? We're like, "Stop eating animals, it's bad," "Animals are suffering," and then people will come back, they'll just say, "No, I'm gonna do what I wanna do," or they'll say, "Oh, well, we can make it better," right? So there's always that argument. So, yeah, but if you ban it, then they can't do it, right?
that's right.
And, um, and I think that's important. Like, after we had a New York State ban on the retail sales of dogs, cats, and rabbits here in New York. And it's really interesting. We go to the park and we have our dog with us and we talk to other dog people and we'll tell them about that when the ban was just going through, we told them about it and they had no idea. And then, we said, but also calling up a breeder or going online for a breeder, that's bad too. Like that's not banned, but it's the same as those pet stores. So is it educate people from the awareness of that law? And people really so we actually interact with as many people as we can on that.
It provides an opportunity.
Yeah, and we can talk about it. And, Patrick's always wearing in the summertime he's got a lot of the shirts from the Puppy Mill pipeline shirts. So a
Ah,
lot of people will talk about that. So then we're like, oh, this is an opportunity because you probably got your dog from a breeder. So let's talk about you not doing that next time,
absolutely.
So it's just a way to talk to people.
And
Um,
we did that too. Our dog, the first Ripley came from a breeder actually, and then we tell people now, we're like, we didn't know any better. Sorry, like
yeah.
so we got our second dog from a rescue. So
Yeah. Yeah, I bought a dog from a pet store way before I was vegetarian, and vegan. We had no idea. We actually thought we were helping that dog because he was there for so long and his price was reduced and he was really sick.
oh wow,
And we thought we were doing the right thing. And then vegetarian, vegan, uh-oh, we didn't do the right thing. And we really believed we did at the time, it wasn't just like we're just going to a pet store to buy we were just went in the mall and went to the pet store, and then we were looking and we saw this poor dog and we knew he had problems and they were trying to get rid of him, and so we really did think we were doing the right thing, and then we didn't. And then, we bought animals before that too and we didn't know. So it's what you do now that matters,
we
right?
didn't know any better.
And
Yeah,
that's yeah, we all come from the same place. So how could people get involved that are listening and they're saying, I want to do this. I see professional bull riders, PBR, coming through my town. I don't want this. What do I do?
sure. Yeah.
Like
Well, I
we
would say
did. We did it with Albany. We contacted you, but go ahead.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And we've been friends ever since. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And that's how you make friends. You network throughout the country and make friends too, because we all need each other and lift each other up and support each other.
It's so true. Yeah. And
Mhm.
it's like I saw this one meme actually. And it's so true. It's like people bond over things they like, but people bond harder over things they don't like. It's like
That's right.
we're
That's
right in
right, and
common.
that gives us a little bit of faith in humanity, the more vegan animal people around you and you surround yourself with, the more that's how you extract that positive energy, and you get it from each other instead of being negative all the time. Like, we have friends that get together and we try not to talk about animal issues at all when we get together. It's like, "Okay, let's try not to," it's not a hard and fast rule, but we don't wanna, like, the mood starts going down, And then we're like, "Okay, let's find ways to just, like, re-energize ourselves." But anyway, so somebody is in whatever city, and they're hearing this and they're like, I can do this. So, or I
Yeah.
want to do this. So how would they do that? They would
Yeah.
contact
So
you.
first thing is probably get in contact with me, which
Yeah.
is I can
Everything.
be reached at info@christiananimalrights.com.
Yep. Everything will be in the show notes too. So people have that too.
Excellent.
Yeah. Go ahead. So you don't have to
Excellent. Yeah.
ravel it all off here, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also on Facebook too. You can get in contact with me
Yes.
that way. And then also, I think that once you get in contact with me too, the first thing that I like to do is try to get in touch with other constituents because believe it or not, it doesn't really take much. And you know this too. It really doesn't
Mhm.
take much to get the attention of the city council that you're in.
Right.
I typically it's like at least 5 will do it, but, I even had one time, like, I was, St. Louis.
Mm.
I had one constituent say, "Hey, I don't like bull riding, and I think it should be out of St. Louis." And so I messaged his city council member and CC'd him on it, and she got back to me the next day, and she was like, she's like, "Let's set up a Zoom meeting." I met with her. She said, "Tell me what's wrong, honey." And
Yeah.
that's
Awesome.
all it took was one person.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, it doesn't usually work out like that, but, if we can
Yeah.
get now, like, Worcester, I always say they're like rock stars up there too, because like, usually, like, when it came to, like, Columbus, Ohio, we're working on something, like, with that, and we had, like, 24 constituents with that, that was the most ever, and then Worcester, there
Wow.
was, like,
That's a
50
lot.
people. I was like, "Wow,
How
that's a
many
lot."
in Worcester?
Like, 50. Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, and they keep coming too, like, Karen keeps finding these people out of the woodwork too.
That's good. Yeah. She's pretty relentless. That's good.
Oh, yeah, I love it, yeah, I can't speak enough good about her too, because she's like
Yeah.
I always do good, like, if you can get me in the door, I can do a presentation and kind of educate people, but the problem is getting in the door, and Karen's like, Here's 50 doors for you."
Yeah. That's right. That's great. Yeah. And that's what we're doing here in Albany. We're finding people that live in the city, so we're contacting them, and we'll probably be doing this in January because it's like December. Everyone's busy. We don't want to, we want to get people when they're fresh after the holidays and be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan, and but gives us some time to gather, so we're not like doing this too quick. Seeing if
Sure.
there's seats that are changing over, because there could be newly elected city council members being sworn in January. So there's a lot of that stuff to think about, and that's what we're all here for, to help too. People that want to do this.
That's what I was thinking too, is probably a new council's coming in anyways, and
Yeah.
it's funny too, like, I've noticed this, like, November, December, I've reached out to city council members, and they don't even answer, like, when it comes to, like, the end of the
Yeah.
month. They're just like, "I'm out of here."
Yeah, right. Yeah, actually, there's one of our state reps is having a town hall on the 18th of December, a state rep, and I'm going, usually they're like gone for the whole month of December. So I was actually surprised about that. But yeah, it's either they're at the end of their term or they're just checked out for the holidays. So, you never
Right.
know. Right.
Right,
So timing can be a lot, I think,
absolutely.
anyway, and also giving yourself time and everything has to be well planned. And I think that's something that people need to remember too, is don't just kind of reach out on a whim and then, not planned, don't have your email thought out or have a sample email like from you and your group. And then, get disappointed because you didn't get an answer. And you have to keep contacting your representatives, whether they're at the low level or higher state level, or just keep contacting until you get something back. I think it's really important. They do care, and it's their job to care about what you have to say.
Yeah, persistence is key. It's like anything.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, if you don't hear back, just keep sending it every week or every month.
Mhm.
That's what I always do. I just keep going until I get a response.
Yep.
There's one woman in Pittsburgh. I haven't heard anything from her in 9 months. I just keep sending her an email every month.
There
So
you go. That's good. Yeah, and just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And then eventually they're going to eventually they're going to answer. Eventually they'll, you know, even if you got to know, then you can move on to somebody else.
exactly,
Sometimes
exactly. It's like just let me know. Yeah,
yeah,
I just started putting out an email. I'm like, by the way, it's okay if the answer is no.
yeah. But let's talk about this. And getting meetings is important too. And now, how important is it to go to your city council meetings? Should we encourage people to, and you can get probably most of them are on Zoom or something, so you don't have to leave the house, but start viewing the meetings, seeing how it goes, seeing the lay of the land. Is that important?
Definitely. Yeah, and I noticed too, like with a lot of city councils. Now, one thing I've noticed too is like with different city councils, cities operate differently. Like even though they may all have city councils and things like that, the way that they introduce things and the way that they function is very different from each other, and it's
Yeah.
never uniformly the same. Like the example I gave of Worcester, like in New York City, we got an ordinance and then it was just introduced, whereas like the
Yeah.
council had to actually have a hearing on whether they should introduce the law. And so it's just little
Yeah.
differences like that that aren't the same. But typically, one thing city councils will do is they'll say like either the first 5 minutes or the end 5 minutes of a meeting, they'll say, "Does anybody want to bring something to our attention at this city council meeting?" And that's what we
Okay.
did at Columbus, actually. We were like, "Hey, there's this issue with rodeos." And then there was a council member that was willing to take it up. That's something I think that is really important too, is that like, attending the city council meetings and saying how they do things and really look at like, okay, if they're doing the first 5 minutes, if we can get 5 people there that can speak for 1 minute about the dangers of rodeos, you have all of their attentions.
Right. And when people have to speak, they can bring a written statement, right? And they can read it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we
So
can actually write it for you too.
yeah, that's good. That's good to know because I know a lot of people are really nervous to speak or they're nervous to write it. But you don't have to memorize it. You can read something, I think that's really important for people to know because it is, I love it. I love going, I love going to the Capitol. I love going wherever and talking to people. And but I know for some people it's difficult. So like what we did in Albany is we would take people with us. So there's like one speaker. We'd split up sometimes. We'd have one speaker going to offices. I know it's a little different, this is state level, but and then have like 5 or 6 people behind us. So this way they know like there's constituents standing behind us, and then one person speaking. And then I found by like the maybe seventh or eighth, a couple of the people behind me start speaking up a little bit because they got the confidence, to do that. So it's like, and join these groups and join these Zooms. And, whenever you guys have any kind of updates, on your social media channels or something, people should definitely go look and be empowered by all of that, by what's going on. I know Karen does for Worcester. She does a lot of like videos on her page. It's
Positive change for animals.
positive change
PCA.
for, and she does updates there. So she'll kind of update everyone. This is how it went.
And another thing too that I think is really important too is that
Yeah.
we started doing in Pittsburgh here. We're always sort of thinking outside the box about what
Mm.
we can do as far as protests. And I think in my time spent doing activism in the last 2 years, one thing I've learned is that picking targets is really smart because you want to be selective in the targets that you hit when you do protesting. But we protest like once every 2 weeks, and we go and hit like we're usually doing 4 or 5 campaigns, and we just all do them in one day. But like one campaign that we're working on right now is PBG Pace Arena is hosting the stadium is hosting the event. And if you can put pressure on that stadium,
Mhm.
they're eventually going to be like, that's one event that they have all year. they're eventually going to be like, you know what, this isn't worth it. And
Right.
one thing that we've been doing, sort of controversially,
Mm.
is we've been protesting the employees' houses for the stadium.
Oh, nice. I love
Yeah,
those kind of protests. That they work.
yeah,
Those protests work. So I love that. Yeah.
you're going to get their attention. Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's how, there's been a lot of movement in the fur industry by doing that, by going to I is the, Vogue, was that done that way?
so a funny story about that actually. So
Yeah.
Vogue actually, so there was a lot of protests going on in New York City, and
Mhm.
then one of the campaigns that's being run by CAFT,
Mm.
Coalition to Abolish the Fur Trade.
Mhm.
They're good friends with one of our activists, and they reached out to him and said, he's from Pittsburgh Animal Defenders. We work pretty closely with them, and he was
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, there's a woman that works for Vogue, and she lives in Pittsburgh, and could you guys protest her house?" And I was like, "Let's do it." And the
Yeah.
very next day, they announced a fur-free policy.
That's awesome.
I
Yeah.
think we were the straw that broke the camel's back, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that it really does work. I know it's not comfortable for everybody,
Right.
but that's I mean, I feel like that makes really fast change when you're
Yeah.
really hitting those people individually. Like here in Albany at it's called the MVP Arena now. I'm not sure. It keeps changing its name, but it might have been the Times Union Center back then, but that's when Ringling Brothers was coming. And then we had our governor did an elephant ban. And the I think from all the years of us now, when we were taught from from the original protest organizer Donna Reynolds, and she mentored us that if there was 7 shows of the circus, you protested all 7 shows. So it wasn't just opening night. So some groups used to do just opening night, but there were 7 shows here in Albany. So they would have like a couple daytime shows. They'd have one for the kids. The school buses would bring kids in. So we were there for every single show, every single year. So the arena decided when the governor passed the elephant ban, the traveling elephant show ban, they decided that they would stop allowing the circus in, and I think it was a 3-year, like, phase in for the
Okay.
bill, which was absolutely insane, too long. But they decided, like, right after the bill was signed, even though there was it didn't go into effect for a few more years, they decided to stop any events that had elephants. So that
Okay.
shut down Ringling for
Right.
us before Ringling, went their way. So, and I think it had to be the protests. We were getting media coverage. We were out there for every single event. There were some we were out there after the event to talk to people. And you would be surprised how many people came out saying the animals looked awful. They looked sad. It was so terrible. You guys were right. So we did as much as we could on that arena in Albany. And that was a big victory that
Okay.
the arena made that decision. So hopefully we can work on them, for PBR too, because, you know, maybe if we get out there and really start giving them trouble, we could do that too. But go ahead. What are your other
Oh, no, no, that's really great
Yeah.
to hear. It's one, it's proven too that, protests work, and I'm sure that was
Yeah.
probably what got Albany, to, phase it out even sooner.
Yeah.
And the stadiums are particularly liable to pressure too, and another thing that is really important too, if you protest the stadium sponsors, I think that actually has some potential as well.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
idea. Yeah.
there's a group, New Hampshire Animal Rights League. They started
Yes.
doing protests at the stadium, which, has been really good, and I think that's important too, because if these events can't host at stadiums, then they can't host anywhere, and
Right.
so or they gotta go, some parking lot out in the middle of nowhere. So it's
Right.
pretty
And professional bull riding is not going to do that because talk about professional bull riding a little bit because we keep mentioning them because they're really a lot of the problem, like in Worcester and Albany and New Hampshire, right? Because you're not seeing full on rodeos travel all the time to these cities. But professional bull riding is like a whole thing.
right, and rodeo, so, like, one thing that, it's kinda funny because PBR exists in this sort of vacuum where they're like, "We're rodeo, but we're not rodeo," and so,
Right.
like, I've seen different conflicting things where their CEO, um, he'll often say things like, "Oh, well, I'm sorry, he's like the spokesperson for marketing or whatever it is, but he'll
Yeah.
often say like, 'Oh, we're not rodeo,' but then when it's
Right.
convenient, they'll say, 'Oh, yeah, we are rodeo,' and so it's these different things, but basically rodeo
Right.
collectively is these 6 events. It's, steer wrestling, bronc riding, team roping, calf roping, and bull riding, and then, saddle bronc riding is typically what they call it, but those 6 events you'll see at a full rodeo. Full
Right.
rodeos aren't typically done in cities because they're not very popular because
Right.
it's sort of very obvious to see the cruelty involved, and a lot of people, especially in urban areas, are very sensitive to that, which they should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, um,
Mhm.
calf roping, for instance, everybody looks at that and they're like, "Oh my god, that's horrible." Like, I saw this calf's eyes and, like, he got tied down and steer wrestling.
It's such blatant cruelty, it's terrible.
You nailed it. Exactly,
Right.
right.
If anyone has, like, a dog or a cat, they know that that's just horrible.
Right, and it's actually been banned, like, I think Rhode Island actually completely banned calf roping, and that
Wow.
one's definitely the most cruel, like,
Yeah.
visually. Steer wrestling is actually maybe worse, but it's a little harder to see the cruelty, but it's very obvious, like,
Yeah.
they grab the steer's head and then force them to the ground, and,
Mhm.
it becomes very obvious the cruelty involved. With bull riding,
Right.
these guys had this idea back in 1992, that seems to be a popular year for rodeo.
Yeah.
They had this idea to break away from the rodeo scene because they were like, "What if we just did bull riding only?" Because
Yeah.
bull riding is definitely the most exciting competition for people. I think that one is the one that people love the most, and they usually save that for the last in the rodeo matches because
Right.
people are like, "Okay, the other ones are, like, interesting, but that one is actually exciting," and it's like especially with our attention deficit focused, lives,
Yeah.
it's understandable why people would gravitate toward it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also I think bull riding is popular because it's the easiest one to disguise the cruelty.
Mhm.
And you really can't see the cruelty involved in bull riding unless you know what you're looking for.
Right.
And one of the things I always talk about is, like, if you see a bull and you'll pretty much see all of them having some or all of these symptoms of they got these big eye whites, that's a big
Yeah.
sign of they're in distress,
Mhm.
as well as, the excessive salivation, that's something that you'll see a lot of, like and that it's actually interesting because a lot of the fans are like, "Oh, they got bull snot," and, like, they act like
Yeah.
it's a cool thing, but it's like, no, that bull's actually in distress, that's a
Right.
symptom of that. And then, there's also, tongue protrusion. If you see a bull like this, like, has his tongue
Mhm.
out,
Mhm.
that's definitely a sign of distress, but the main thing too with bull riding is that it's easy to disguise the cruelty, but it's also the cruelty is caused really by the instruments as well, because, like, if you didn't have those instruments, a lot of times
Right.
those animals, they wouldn't even do what they do, like, PBR, they love to say it, they're like, "Oh, well, these animals were bred to buck," and it's like, that's probably true to some degree, but it
Mhm.
wouldn't be nearly as exciting without that flank strap because they have a flank strap around their abdomen and they're trying to kick that off,
Mhm.
and when that's not present, it's a pretty lame ride. The bull just, kinda turn to the side and knock you off.
Right.
It's like
Right. Yeah. But
it's
they're
no
in
big deal.
pain. Right.
Yeah, the flank strap, and it digs into their abdomen, and then it creates a discomfort, that's really what it is, and, the circus industry, when they were making their rounds, they would say, "Oh, well, like, we use elephant, goads or, bull hooks," and, like, they tickle, they don't even
Yeah,
hurt.
it's a guide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
Right.
guide,
Yeah.
that's what they say,
Yeah.
yeah, totally absurd,
It's a
and,
guide. Yeah. But yeah.
we
People
know
are
better.
afraid of it. It's fear, you know?
Right.
Pain and fear is how they try to say too, because bulls are these massive animals, right? So they always try to say they say this with horses and horse racing too, and they said it, I think, with, um, maybe not so much elephants, but maybe tigers and lions and animals like that in circuses, like, "Oh, they can kill us in a second," or, "We have to do this to control these huge animals," but it's all pain and fear, and that's just what it comes down to every single time to have any animal entertainment. And professional bull riding is like a whole thing, right? There's, like, stats
Oh,
on
yeah.
these riders, and they have different levels of competition
Oh,
and
yeah.
standings and like a I don't know, like a World Series or Super Bowl of this. Isn't
Yeah, they
it
have,
like at
like,
the end?
the finals are in, Fort Worth, Texas, that's sort
Right.
of where they have it, and then they also have, Vegas, the national finals rodeo. I don't know if they go there or not,
Mhm.
but that's something that, yeah, I mean, they have a big league
Right.
about it, and then I think that's another thing too that we collectively need to target, but I sort of need a lot of people to do it and a lot of organization, but I hope to do that over the years, but I
Yeah.
would really like to see the protest or the sponsors of PBR get protested because a lot of
Yeah.
them are big companies that aren't necessarily really, like, involved. Like, some of them, like, there's, Bass Pro Shops, like, that they're never gonna I mean, their whole thing is animal cruelty. That's the
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
but,
we have
like,
that.
Progressive.
Yeah, we have that in horse racing too. Like there's horse racing industry, sponsors, so we don't target those. We target, Pepsi and Ford and all of that, but those are the bigger ones and harder to work on, but target those other ones. Actually, I came across a sponsor of PBR by mistake because it's a product that is vegan friendly. It's called Element. It's like one of those hydration packets, like drinks. And I was purchasing their product for like after exercise or whatever in the summer. And then I saw on their social media that they had an ad, and it was a spokesperson from PBR talking about how he needs to hydrate after he's bull riding. And I collected a whole bunch of contact information, so we definitely should go after them. And I did go after some of the vegan influencers who, have their discount codes for them. And I contacted them and said, do you know that they're, promoting bull riding, and
Right.
they're a vegan friendly, product. And it says vegan friendly. I know there may not be a vegan product. They're not vegans that made the product, but, people need to be aware of that. And people that are vegan that are that are buying this product need to be aware of it too, so they can boycott. But,
That's brilliant. Yeah, I'm
it's
really
just
glad you did that too. I didn't even know that. That's
yeah, so it's something I wanna tell you about too. It's said to
yeah,
you
they
because
sound like
I
they're
just
ripe for a protest.
yes, I know we have to do something there. Yeah, I do have all the information, I'll send it to you. But
Awesome. Oh, and like some of the other ones too is like
yeah.
progressive insurance. It's like I feel like they would like why are they even associated with that, you know?
Mhm.
And same thing with horse racing too. It's like why the hell is
Yeah.
Ford even Ford you would think like
Yeah.
being a car company would not want horses to come back.
I
Yeah.
know. And then you have all these beverage companies and things like that. And actually, we found out through our research on, the sponsors for the Triple Crown events. I was going on Twitter actually to get, like, their Twitter handle so we could do an action against sponsors. And I saw that I had a whole bunch of, like, followers that also followed this, like, a wine company. And I went on Barnivore, which is the vegan website where you can see if your alcohol is vegan, and that particular wine was listed as vegan. So all of these vegans are following them, buying their wine, but they are sponsoring the Kentucky Derby. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So we did an action for that. I contacted Barnivore and they did not answer me. I contacted them a few times saying, look, you can say the ingredients are vegan and the company says, but I think consumers need to know that they're sponsoring the Kentucky Derby.
Right?
They never got back to me. So
Ah,
we might
man.
have to talk to them again.
Sounds ripe for a protest.
There you go. They're vegans though.
Right,
They're
right.
carnivore, they're supposed to be
Get sticky.
vegan. But it's like if you're gonna inform consumers on, the ingredients, then they need to know who they're sponsoring as well because sponsors keep it going.
Absolutely.
Sponsors give a lot of money to these, to these companies, to these events and through advertising and if you take their sponsors away, they don't have much left,
That's right. That's right.
you know?
Yep. Yeah, it's key is that, yeah, and we actually had success with that too, like San Diego, the San Diego Rodeo, we've been contacting sponsors, for the last year, and then
Yeah.
also we sent a big letter from a lot of different groups,
Mhm.
to the sponsors of the San Diego Rodeo, and Monster Energy has dropped out yesterday, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so
Big
that
victory.
was a cool
Yeah.
one. Yep,
That's really
and
great.
we'd like to see them drop PBR, actually, that's really what I wanna see them
Yeah.
do well, but, so that's the thing too, like with protests, is like trying to find secondary targets, tertiary targets, things that are like
Mhm.
sort of loosely connected, and then they
Yeah.
can probably easily drop off. And
Yeah.
then, the other thing I wanted to mention too was, so a lot of this rodeo is seeing an uptick right now too in popularity. That's sort of the only sport that is
Yeah.
seeing, that's sort of not having a decline right now out of like, because it's like,
He did quote air quotes, I saw it.
yeah,
Just so anyone knows he said
that's
sport.
sport, yeah.
I saw it. I'm a witness. Go ahead.
Right, and, this that's the only one that's sort of, like, not having a decline, and rodeo is actually on the incline right now, and a lot of it is because of, the show
It's crazy.
Yellowstone. Yeah, and I've never watched the show.
What show
It's
is
funny.
it?
Yellowstone?
Yellowstone. Oh, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I talked over you, so I wanted to make sure you said it.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is because of that too, because I think the uptick in surge in popularity in rodeo is because of that, because,
Ugh.
that show started a couple years ago, and then, like, my sister watched it, and she was like, "You absolutely hate this show." And I think there's a guy on there that's a rodeo guy that's,
It
like, a popular character, and so I think now that sort
oh.
of introduced this idea of, like, rodeos are cool, and,
So
you
does
know,
it, like, romanticize that cowboy
yeah,
thing?
yep,
Ugh. It's so
that's what it
gross.
is.
Yeah.
And then this is sort of my pet theory as well too that,
Mm.
and again, I don't mean to get political, but I think it's sort of just the nature of what we're dealing with, is I think that
Yeah.
with the growing concern about, like, trans identities and
Mm.
trans people and things like that,
Yeah.
I think there's now this backlash to it that's going on where,
Yeah.
like, for instance, like, Harrison Butker talked about, like, women need to get back in the kitchen and work
Oh,
like, like, just these horrible, like, misogynistic things he said, and all
right.
of a sudden his jersey was, like, really high selling. Um,
Ugh.
and I think it's this idea of, like,
Yep.
people are looking for that traditional aspect of women, and
Mhm.
then on the corner aspect is the traditional aspect of men, and so people are like, "Oh, rodeo guys, that's like a traditional man."
Ugh.
So right. we had the same
Yeah.
reaction.
Like this macho thing. Yeah, that's it's awful.
Right.
Yeah, I
I
think it's like just like yeah, these things are weaponized in
right.
different ways. And so yeah, you're right. I think you're spot on with that. I think
Thank
that's
you.
where it all comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of also and then I think another aspect of it too that I think the reason rodeo is also popular was,
Mhm.
I think that there's also this growing concern within all sports of making them safer. Like, you're seeing it with
Yeah.
football, hockey, soccer, baseball, like a lot of this concern about concussions and trying to minimize head injuries and things like that. And then I think because of that, there's been, for every positive or sort of progressive move, there's always a reaction. And that's with
Right.
trans people as well as
Yeah.
sports, because sports is seeing the safety culture, and then
Right.
rodeo is kind of going the other direction where they're like the way they label it,
Mhm.
they're like, oh, we're the toughest sport on dirt.
Yeah, it's like
All these other sports
risky
are
and yeah.
right,
Ugh.
exactly. All these other sports are trying to get safer and they're trying to get more deadly. And
Yeah, and it's extremely deadly to animals. The
right,
human most of the times the humans were walking away.
well,
They may have injuries or something, but these animals are just injured, they're confined. So we have these bulls, right? So this is because we always talk about the confinement, and horse racing wrongs and for all animals, whether it's chickens or pigs and the extreme confinement, these unnatural. So when there's animals that are traveling like this, these bulls are in trucks,
right.
transport trucks, right? They're being confined the whole time. I'm sure they're chained, under the arena. Like they're rolling in here tonight and they have a show tonight and a show tomorrow. So what's happening to these bulls, during that time?
Especially in the cold like that too, like, going
Yeah.
in tractor trailers and,
Mhm.
one thing I will say too, and I think that it's like it's one of those things where, I think a lot of people have trouble with nuance, like where, because the first thing I'll hear from rodeo people is like, "Oh, well, those animals are pampered. They live like this really great lifestyle," and that may be true. Like, for instance, they come from these ranches where the bulls are basically out in pasture, and they don't have it nearly as bad as factory farmed animals.
Mm.
Now, don't take that as I'm not saying that as sort of an endorsement, but what I always tell people is the problem is not outside the arena, the problem is inside the arena. You can pamper them all you want, but the fact that you're tormenting them every weekend is the problem.
Mm.
And when we hone in on that, that's really the issue. And I have heard, and when we talk about transportation, actually, because they contract with a lot of stock contractors that will ship those bulls, like sometimes across state lines, sometimes within the state. It's hard to say where they come from. But my one friend told me actually, and I don't know if he has a citation for this, and so don't take this as gospel, but I
Mm.
did hear, and it makes a lot of sense that the bulls are actually dehydrated for 48 hours beforehand, so
Mm.
they're not given any food or water, and it actually makes sense when you think about it because I've
Yeah.
never seen any of them, have it or, go, defecate or urinate within the arena, and so
Mhm.
that kinda makes sense is they probably don't wanna make a mess in the arena,
Right.
and so they dehydrate them beforehand.
Right. And it could be just another tool to another way to aggravate them and torment them, to get them to do what they want to do. It's all about, getting them to put on the show.
Yeah, and it could be too, because it's like it's hard to say too, and I'd have to do more investigation on stock contractors, 'cause they have them all over the states, and who they
Mm.
contract with is hard to say, but I'm sure that, transporting the animals even overnight is a problem. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
they wanna do that, and, but, anyways, the other thing I wanna talk about too is with that, the way that they transport these animals too, they use electric prods,
Yeah.
which is a big part of it too, because when you get rid of that electric prod, these events go away.
Right.
And, like PBR likes to say, like, "Oh, we don't use electric prods within the chutes, but they're in back pens." But the thing is, those animals are conditioned and they know that if they don't do what they're supposed to do, they're gonna get zapped. And
Right.
so it's sort of this coerced performance, throughout
Yeah. It's
the
that
nation.
fear. Yeah. Yeah, just like with the ringling elephants where, the bull hook, if the bull hook was just shown at them, they would do whatever you wanted. So what other victories have you had? Any recent victories or victories you've had over the years since you started Christian Animal Rights Association?
Oh, sure, yeah, I mentioned the foie gras in,
Yep.
Pittsburgh and Brookline, and then
Yeah.
we also got, locally in Pennsylvania, we got a, bill passed through the state that, protects animals from domestic violence. Because one thing that, we noticed
Mm.
with, Humane Action Pennsylvania, they did sort of the legwork on it, but
Yeah.
they noticed that a lot of times women, they wouldn't leave an abusive situation because the husband typically, would
Yeah.
say like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna kill the dog if you leave."
Yeah.
And so they have protection orders where if a woman wants to leave an abusive situation, they can take the dog with them. And
Oh, that's
so,
great. Yeah.
yeah, that was a really good one we passed,
Yeah.
2 years ago. And then we also helped with a couple federal legislations, like we got the Big Cat Public Safety Act passed, that banned the use or banned private ownership of big cats, which is like
Mhm.
Tiger King and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They dealt with that. And then the one we really worked hard on, that FDA Modernization Act 2.0, which got rid of the requirement to test on animals. So that sort of started the rollout of like where the FDA they're now winding down animal testing because it's no longer required. And so
Oh, that's great.
yeah,
That's
that's going
awesome.
really well.
Yeah.
And institutionally, we had a bunch of wins this year. Actually, we got Vogue to drop fur. That was really awesome.
Yeah. That's
We helped out.
awesome. That's a huge win for fur.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. We were really happy. That was the only time that we ever did a protest and something literally changed overnight. It was so funny.
Yeah. That is, like, really great. That's really great, and I think it's so uplifting to people to see all these victories and hear about them. And I feel like we have had so many victories this year, especially with the fur industry.
Yeah.
So many, and so that's really good.
Yeah, fur, foie gras, and animal experimentation are definitely the 3 that are moving really well.
Mhm.
'Cause,
Yeah.
we also got, New York Fashion Week, we did some protests. We did a protest for that where, it was a company out in Cleveland, IMG, that owns the trademark for New York Fashion Week. We did a protest to them, and then they dropped fur at New York Fashion Week, so that was really
Yes,
awesome.
that's awesome.
And then we
That's
also
huge.
helped out with, closing Miami Seaquarium. That went well,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we've had so many
That's
wins this
great.
year, actually. It's been really
Yeah.
great.
That's great. Yeah, see, wins happen all the time, and it's really important to celebrate them. Whether they're big wins or small wins, it's always important to celebrate them because that's how we keep going. So, which leads me to another question that I ask a lot of our guests is how do you avoid burnout?
How do I avoid burnout?
Yeah, because it's a lot. So, we're doing a lot all the time, and it's hard to stay positive. So, what do you do? Do you have like certain things you do, like to unwind?
Well, my wife and I love movies. We always go to the theater every weekend. We try to at
Oh,
least.
that's
So
good. Yeah.
I think the first time I met you, I was like, "We're going to the drive-in
Yes. Yes. You,
tonight."
yeah, you were. That's funny. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah, I think it's good to do something outside of, the work of animal right. And you still work as a nurse, right? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually,
So y
I still do that. I work 3 days a week, so it's pretty nice.
yeah.
I do 3 weeks, at my nursing job and then 4 days I'm sorry, not 3 weeks, 3 days on my nursing job and 4 days on, my animal rights job.
So you're away from the animal rights a little bit too. That's good too, I think.
Yes.
And it's hard. Do you do like 12-hour days? You do
I
long
do
days?
8. Yeah, 6
8.
or
Oh,
8.
okay. Well, that's good. And
Right.
it's a lot of stress. Um, is there anything else that we didn't I have a couple extra questions, fun questions at the end, but is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanna get
Oh,
out there?
one thing I would like to,
Yeah.
tell people too is that
Yeah.
LA, like, I think LA's become sort of a battleground, and
Yeah.
one thing that they're doing too is they're taking comments from the public, and they're
Oh,
gonna be doing
great.
that until probably the bill is passed, but the bill is passed through various different, phases because originally they
Yeah.
borrowed Pittsburgh's law, like I said, which banned the tools,
Yeah.
and, the issue too was that, with with LA, they banned the tools, but then they found out that that was gonna also shut down the equestrians,
Mhm.
and so then they pivoted to a outright ban where it would ban, like, all the events of rodeo basically except for barrel racing, and now
Yeah.
they're coming out and saying that it's racist, it's culturally insensitive, and all
Ugh.
this other nonsense.
Yeah.
And so, one thing I would say too is if you can submit comments to the LA City Council, I can give you a link for it and everything too,
Yeah.
but that's really important that people comment about that, and then also, LA that's why I always focus on sort of the tools of torment because then they can't come out and say, "Oh, well, you're, violating our First Amendment right," or some
Right.
other nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, they're gonna fight it however and it's a very, dramatic way that they fight it. In that way, it's very dramatic, I think.
Totally nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, this is blatant animal cruelty. I mean, how hard is that to see?
That's
So do you
always
have to
been
be in the state of California to take action on that or can you use
anywhere.
anywhere?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
our team is always writing to them and we're based out of Pittsburgh. They'll take
Yeah.
comments from anywhere. Yeah, I mean,
Oh, that's
the
great.
rodeo we just recently surpassed like, they wanna drive comments and see, like the rodeo industry seems to think that if they have more comments, they're gonna eventually defeat the ordinance, and the
Yeah.
animal rights group or the animal rights collectively just surpassed them, and so they're
Yeah.
very good about that, so just keep the comments coming.
Keep them coming. Okay, cool. We'll put that in the show notes, and, I'll make sure that I'm telling everyone I know about it too, and if you share anything, let me know. We'll share it on our social media too. So
Will
thank you
do.
for that. Alright, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I think sometimes in our conversations, we want people to get to know us a little bit better. So that's why I do some of these. So sometimes I do rapid fire ones, but yours aren't so like fast rapid fire. But
Sure.
one of my questions was the first animal you ever bonded with, but you did talk about that first animal you bonded with in your vegetarian leading up to vegan story. So I think that was so that was kind of built right into your story. But what is your activism superpower?
My superpower,
Yeah.
I would say probably logic and, like, my pursuit of, like, reason, because that's, like,
Yeah.
one thing that I think a lot of us are guilty of is, like, a
Mm.
lot of times, like, emotional rhetoric works for a lot of people, and not that that's a
Yeah.
bad thing, of course, but I think it also can be sort of weaponized where, like, what
Yeah.
I always like to do is I just get the studies and the facts, and then whatever the facts say is what I align with, and I sort of,
Right.
like I've adjusted myself based on that, like, I think one thing is maintaining it that's actually maybe my superpower is integrity, because
Yeah.
one thing I will always say is, like, I used to always comment and say like, "Oh, well, like, rodeo is animal cruelty," and I
Yeah.
started doing that on barrel racing,
Mhm.
and a lot of these people were like, "How is it cruel?" And I really couldn't find any studies that said that, like, the horses strongly dislike this like they do bull riding, like the bulls
Mhm.
dislike bull riding, and so I sort of stopped commenting, and I'm like, "You know what? Maybe barrel racing, even though it's sort of objectionable, it's actually not that bad,
Mm.
but bull riding and steer wrestling and all these other things are terrible," so I focus on that, and so I think integrity would probably be mine.
What's one animal that you'd love the world to understand better?
One animal? Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say probably raccoons, 'cause they they
Yeah.
sort of have this, like, reputation that, like, they're sort of, like, mischievous, but
And they're all
they're really funny.
rabid. People think they're all rabid
Right,
too,
that too.
right?
That too.
So, but they're not. They're like little gentle little creatures, aren't they?
I just look at them. They're funny too, like,
Yeah.
my dad told me the story about when he was a kid, my grandma used to make, like, banana bread,
Mhm.
and, every time she would make banana bread, she'd put it, like, on this table, and, like, the window would be open, and so the
Yeah.
raccoons would all come outside and, like, start pawing at the glass.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, that's a good one, actually. So I sort of I touched on this actually earlier, but
Mm.
so I listened to a speech. We went to EA for Christians, which is Effective Altruism for Christians. They had a conference in Washington D.C. that we got invited to, and that I spoke at. And there was a speaker. I think I could say his name, Bruce Friedrich. He worked for
Mhm.
PETA for a number of years,
Mhm.
and he had this really really great advice. And he talked about how he advocated for veganism for like 25 years, and he said that, like, there's no movement on it. Like, people were sort of like against veganism, and it's because of human nature.
Mm.
And he talked about how, like, even though we can try to suppress certain things like, war and all these terrible things that we do, they still exist. And
Mhm.
so meat is sort of always going to exist in some form. And so what can we do about that? And he created a lab grown meat company. And I
Mhm.
think that was just so great because it was sort of like, you can talk about ethics and morality till you're blue in the face, but
Mhm.
what it really comes down to is you can't fight human nature.
Mhm.
There's a quote from a movie, Watchmen. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Mhm. I haven't, but I've heard of it.
It's a good one. It's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah. There's this one really great quote from Dr. Manhattan. He's a superhero, and he
Mm.
says, he's like all powerful, and he says, "I can change almost anything, but I can't change human nature."
Mm.
And I thought that that was sort of aligned with what Bruce Friedrich was talking about because
Yeah.
it's like put your effort and your energy into something that you can actually change rather than constantly, banging your head off the wall trying to fix something that's
Right.
just never going to change.
And it stops burnout and giving up too,
Right.
right? Because I think I really like that because I think a lot of people give up because they're like, "Oh, I haven't made one vegan myself," or I just people don't wanna listen or, so then pivot, do something different. So if, you're trying to go out there and make a vegan world, then, keep doing that to an extent, but, try for a bull riding ban or try for, or work on something else, what'd you say?
Horse racing ban.
A horse racing ban. I try not to plug us like crazy, but yeah, it's true. Then, because there is that, Patrick did a talk on single issue causes because and I think we talked to you about this before too, is that there's, we got to end factory farming, got to end factory farming. Well, that's a long way off. And there's all these, there's the bulls and there's the horses and there's the elephants and they still need us too. So you have to do some. Look, if all the vegans said, "We're not gonna do anything about fur
Right.
until we have a vegan world." Can you imagine? Look, I mean, fur is like 85% gone, right?
Right.
So, there's so much progress there. So that's why single issue causes are really important, and it does take that pressure off of and that burnout and that giving up, feeling, I think, off of you too. So, like you were saying.
I agree too, and I think that's another way we sort of avoid burnout too, is like,
Yeah.
my wife and I talk about with our ministry, like, I think we were experiencing a lot of burnout when we were just focusing on food, but then when we shifted and said, like, maybe we can do something better with entertainment, experimentation, and fashion, and so now
Mhm.
what I constantly am doing is like, still vegan, still concentrating on how we
Yeah.
can help those animals with food, but
Right.
I think I talked about this with you and Patrick actually, but there's a quote I
Yeah.
always use, which is, "Take what the defense gives you," and
Mhm.
so, there's like this philosophy in football where, you don't have to throw the ball 80 yards down the field. You just have to chip away. And, if the
Right.
defense is going to give you 5 yards, take it. And then all of a sudden, 5 yards, it comes into a touchdown. You don't have to
Right.
go for it all at once. And that's sort of what we do with animal activism is if we can just chip
Yeah.
away at things that the communities are willing to give to us, then all of a
Right.
sudden, we're making a difference. And,
Yeah.
the public might not be willing to give up meat, but they are willing to give up fur, foie gras, experimentation,
Right.
horse racing, hopefully bull riding soon.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And it's a way better alternative than giving up.
That's right.
And I think I've seen so many people they just give up. They're like, "We're not gonna be able to do it. I'm just gonna give up and just be vegan all by myself." And the animals need us. All animals need us, and I think
Absolutely.
that's really important. And if we can get that little 5 yards, it's better than giving up because you got somewhere,
We're
You
going
got
back.
to take some steps forward. Okay, so one last one. What's one thing people can do right now, today, to help animals?
I would say probably the most effective thing is to investigate, especially like in your city,
Mm,
who sells fur and who sells foie gras, because
mm,
those are sort of like the low hanging fruit right now. Like
yeah,
where,
great
like,
answer. Mhm,
yeah, and I think
mhm,
that's so important too, because a lot of times I'll talk to people like, I was talking to some folks up in major city in Boston, and they're an animal rights group and they do great work, of course. And I was kind of surprised, but I was like,
mhm,
yeah, do you have a lot of restaurants that sell foie gras? And then they were just kind of like, I don't know. And I was like, "What about fur?" And they were like, "Yeah, maybe." And I was like, I
mhm.
feel like those things, like, we get ourselves caught up because we're just like, "Oh, we wanna end all these big things,"
Yeah,
there's things right in front of you that you could absolutely take out, and fur and foie gras, I mean, you probably just have to tell a restaurant or a designer like, "Hey, we're gonna protest you if you still have that." They'd probably drop it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's there and it's doable.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And it's like, society kind of is willing to give those up too because it's one item, and it's like
mhm,
very few fashion, I think pretty much every major retailer except Louis Vuitton, doesn't sell fur anymore, and
mhm,
so it's probably these small mom and pop shops that, like, they probably don't make not much money off of it anyways.
yeah,
And and, and then with foie gras too, a lot of these are like steakhouses that sell, a myriad of expensive dishes. One dish is not gonna, like, ruin their business, and it's not worth the
right,
protest, and so that's something you can change pretty much, within a couple weeks within your city.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a great conversation with a lot of uplifting things for people and activism and just ways to keep going and not give up. So thank you so much for being here with me. And I'm sure we'll have you back on again because I think there's a lot more that that we want to talk to you about. So so thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me too, Nicole. Like I said, when I first met you and Patrick, I was like, I think we have to shut this conversation off because I think we're just going to talk all day if we don't. So
Right.
you guys are so easy to talk to, and I agree.
Y-
You both are
yes,
very
you too.
inspiring, uplifting.
Yeah. And it's great to be with like-minded people, kindred spirits and just talk about animals and the ways we can help them and to help hopefully inspire other people to not give up and keep fighting.
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yes, thank you so much.